This is day 652 of the Aruch Shulchan Yomi. This week's Aruch Shulchan Yomi is sponsored for a schus, for success in business endeavor, in all his business endeavors, for Yonasan Ezra ben Chana Feigel. Shavim very much at Slocha. If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming shir or more of the Aruch Shulchan Yomi, please come me directly. Be very greatly appreciated. Today we're doing Siman Shin Pei Beis, Tez Zayin Til Chav Hey. Tez Zayin. Kos Rabbeinu Abeis Yosef. The Sib sign. If you rented out the property from the non-Jew for a specific amount of time. By the time is over, you have to do a second series. You also have to do a second Eruv. First Eruv terminates when the series terminates and doesn't get aroused again. This is pretty astonishing. Why should there be possible? But here, we know if you made an Eruv through a door, and the door got stopped up on a weekday. V'niftach b'Shabbos, and it got opened again on Shabbos. That Eruv goes back to being kosher. Much kosam b'sim shinayim dalot. Sifra Agadol hevi zeh b'shem Ramban ayin sham. And in fact, the it does bring that in the name of the Ramban. V'lais b'lei perhaps because the came to the same with takonis chachamim. The Eruv below schiras and Eruv klum. Perhaps because chachamim are mistaked that an Eruv without schiras is meaningless. It's as if the air was completely nullified. It's not like where a door was sealed off. It's not like where a door was sealed off. The little shach b'zeh takonis chachamim. There's no issue of the takonis chachamim of a prerequisite for the eruv. Well, I'm not sure I hear the chiluk so much, but that's the chiluk. There was another chiluk. This time oh, this one I like better. This time Yada Pascho. If the opening gets closed, he can open it up himself. Showing the schir as opposed to the rental, it's not in his hands. If non-Jew doesn't want to rent it to him at this point, hooray, I can't rent it against his will. Nearly it seems Dafka Gam Rabbeinu Abeis Lomra Avralem Shabbos Achas Bos Chiyus. Shon says Bechish, but okay, it's Shon's entitled to say that. It's only null and void, and the air of null and void along with it if a Shabbos has passed without the Chiyus being in effect. Does make it big of then it's called the air is cancelled. Avim Bosa Shavua, but if the same week Chazal was suffering manner before Shabbos, lo make it big air. It's not called that the air was nullified. You'd sign. He rented out for a specific amount of time. And during this time, the non-Jewish owner rented out his apartment to another non-Jew. The first rental is not nullified. Because the initial landlord is still the owner. Because when the tenant leaves, will go back to the landlord. So that's the case. Even if the second non-Jew, the tenant, protests the schirus, and he wants to give back the money, and Shem don't listen to him. The owner is still the first fellow. 3 times, according to this reasoning, something to do with actually with a time period. Even if the original schirus was generic, without a time frame. But it doesn't sound like that from the Beis Yosef. Where he writes it was the schirus was a certain amount of time. So the says the primary reason for Salacha is what the Levush writes. Since it was rented for a specific amount of time. And during that time, the landlord cannot renege on the deal without giving back the money. It's as if the landlord has made a condition with the tenant that he has to provide. The tenant cannot protest the right of the Jew as long as that initial contract is in effect. So if that's the case, if you just rent it out without a time frame, then you also have to rent it out for the tenant as well. The bracket he says here, Shabbos, it doesn't make a difference if the original landlord rented out to a tenant or he sold it to a new landlord. If it's within the original time frame, the second owner has to fulfill the condition of the first, the original landlord. But it's clear that if the non-Jewish landlord then rents it out to a Jew, so then all you need from the Jew is to participate in an Eruv, not to actually, you don't no longer need a skirus and shus. Mishnah says that some people are machmir by a sale, that if the original landlord sells it to the original non-Jew, sells it to a second non-Jew, that you should redo the skirus. So it's appropriate to be machmir to do that over again. Yudches. Yev Shomer, those who say the email scharo mikuti bilkol azman umeis. If you rent out from a non-Jew a specific amount of time and the non-Jew died, then the schirus is null and void. You have to do a new schirus from the heir. H-E-I-R. The Rila is the evidence that this is me ma'are b'siman shin ayin aleph. In terms of when at the eruv, when the initial person made the eruv dies, so the heir has to make a new eruv. As far as it does not carry over. Ain't a dimyon. It's not a comparison. The eruv have a time mishum dira. Eruv is because everybody is now collectively in one, considered to be one unit of dwelling. And the heir was not living there previously. Is nothing to do with rental. Where an heir has the obligation to continue the contracts of his father. Whatever his father sold, or rent it out. Can't rent out, can't inherit something which his father already gave, either literally or figuratively, to somebody else. That's saying according to what we said Sif Test Vav. That the non-Jew himself couldn't be reneged. Even those who hold that the non-Jew, the original non-Jew, the father could have reneged. Once he gave back the money. Nevertheless, as long as he didn't get back the money, so the Jews who rent out the rights have the rights. So it's going to be our closest mind. They don't have to make a new rental from the heir until the original term is up. Certainly, if the heir did not make a protest against them, they certainly carry until the end of the time they made up with the father. The Tara, Mishnah brings down, the Tara says if you rent it from a non-Jew and he died and he left an heir, so the original schirus from the father does not help. And but that's going to show the Tara that even within the time frame, the non-Jew can renege on the deal. But according to that within the time frame, he cannot renege on the deal, no matter what. That's the case. Even if it dies, the schirus is not nullified, and even if the heir stands and protests, because it's a fait accompli. But if there was not a specific time frame, that might not apply. Yud Tes. Chamisha Shishrim b'chotzer achas. You have 5 people who are in one chotzer. Ein tzol kol echad v'echad l'skor men. You don't need everybody to go rent from the non-Jew. Elechad tzochem ben mishul klum. One rents for everybody else. You don't have to tell them you're renting for everybody else, for other people. Let's say he only rents for himself. So what? Came in the chutzner, I thought actually Yisrael. Now the chutzner is considered to be the Jews. The however, the rental has to be with the goodwill, so to speak. In other words, the true consent of the non-Jew. I mean, kaful askir, if you compel him to rent it to you, animal, it's not effective. But if you askir ko, even if you rented it out till now, but I thought animal till askir, and you no longer want to rent out, also the kofu, you can't compel the non-Jew to rent it out to you. If it's not like a case of if somebody is accustomed to participate in Vatachos now reneges, where they compel him to participate, like we wrote, the Zelbi, so that's where the Jew. As a kuti, we can't compel the non-Jew. That would not be a true schirus. I call him the score me shto, but we have an eitzah. There's a loophole. In that case, we can rent it from his wife or his employee, as we shall see. Chav, Kasar Rabbeinu Rambam and Sif Aleph. You saw Sheishil or Hiskir, a Jew who loaned or rented a base of his house to a non-Jew. Eno Oser Olav. The non-Jew's presence does not make it does not require skiros rishus. Lo Hishil or Skila base of Desha he didn't loan or rent out his house to a non-Jew that he should forbid his capacity to carry on Shabbos. But if the house belonged to a non-Jew, and a Jew rented it from him, Vudar Babayis Dimo, and he's living with the house with him, and a Skiras Million and Skiras Eruv. The Skiras does not work in terms of the Skiras for an Eruv. So again, if the house belongs to a non-Jew and a Jew rents it from him, but the non-Jew remains in the house at the same time, the skiros is not effective for the skiros of the Eruv. What does that mean? Says the Tam Pasha, the skiros Eruv shematzkel chalko b'chatzar. The skiros of the Eruv is that the non-Jew rents out to the Jew his portion of the chatzar. Avidei skiros abayis, but by renting the house, atu lo nishalo kuti chelik b'chatzar, does non-Jew not retain a portion of the chatzar? So basically saying like this, and I don't know if I realized that a moment ago, so let me backtrack a bit. The fact that the Jew is renting out his dwelling area from the non-Jew is not sufficient to count as skiros eruv. It's paying him rent. Okay, that's very nice. But since the non-Jew is also living there simultaneously, so the non-Jew is not giving up his rishus in the chutzner. He's only renting out to him his rishus, part of his rishus in the house, and perhaps even part of his rishus in the chutzner. But the non-Jew still retains rights in the chutzner himself. He's living there, so therefore you still have to do an additional skiros rishus for the eruv to be effective. Yeshik shor ben Ramon Mashi's brother Shin Pei Dal. Some people ask him from later on. The chsanya nichlas b'rishus osam miyad. When a guest comes in with permission, he forbids immediately. Why does the it's really a flip side of the question. This is why does the non-Jew who comes into the house, the beginning of the sif, not answer immediately on the Jew to carry? It says it's not quite a question. That's talking about where you have no control over the presence of the non-Jew, such as where you're forced to quarter non-Jew, the soldiers of the king. The Shami's Rabbi said this, we're going to clarify when we get there. The Bir Halacha writes that if the Jew rents out the property to a non-Jew, it's not just that he doesn't answer the Jews' rights, but of course also the other people in Chutzner's rights are not hindered. Which brings down the Gra, and his opinion is that specifically where the landlord or the person loaning out the property makes a condition that he can remove the tenant anytime he wants, then the tenant's non-Jew sentence is not forbidden. But where you cannot remove him anytime you want, so he definitely does forbid. And the Allah evidently spends a long time on this, but Aruch HaShulchan clearly does not hold that chumrah. Chavav Okasab. We also the Ramah also. You saw she's kirachil ba'is chavero. Of a Jew rented or loaned a house to his friend, the Sham Dar Kuti, and there's a non-Jew living there. Avu b'shiyeshel tfisa b'bayis, even though the Jew has ownership of the stuff in the house, he has owns the oven or the refrigerator. Lamai does what you have to rent out the area from the non-Jew. Lamar, the Game saw masker Dor Sham. The Jew was living there as well. Mimela came in Abishnei Israelim, so therefore, since there are two Jews, other person, the Chotzer, and this Jew, they have to rent for the right for the non-Jew. Shakuti Darba Bayis Shalo, where it's talking about where the non-Jew is living in his own area. It's a little bit confusing. Let's go back to the beginning of the Sif. He says, Yisrael Shishkir Shil Bais L'Chaver V'Shom Darkuti. There's a non-Jew living in, so the Yisrael is retaining his ownership. He is also subletting at the same time to another Jew. But the non-Jew has his own separate abode there in that compound. So again, Yisrael buys Chaver V'Shom Darkuti. There's a non-Jew there. Even though the tfisa, and I think I got this wrong the first time, that's we'll have to go back. Even though the Jewish landlord has the tfisa in the Jewish tenant's house, they're still considered like two separate people, and therefore need an Arab and scarce shus. That's he's saying. It's not considered like one Jew with one non-Jew. No, there are two non-Jews. Again, the Jew who's renting out lives there. Came down says it's two Jews. They have to rent out the rights from the non-Jew. When non-Jew is in his own house, they didn't rent it out from the Jew. So again, they're in the same compound, but the non-Jew has his own specific. It's his own house. Even though the first Jew has a tfisa in the second Jew's house, which he rented out, as these can't be carried on Shabbos in the second Yisrael's house. But I might say might say it's considered as if the landlord is living with the tenant. As if they both live in the same room, so you shouldn't require rental. As it's going to tell us that it doesn't work, it's not effective. The shame she'er bein amol below schirus, just like an Arab does not work without schirus. Kamo chen tfisa lo mahani. So the tfisa doesn't work to negate the need for schirus. The Biur Halacha brings out that the Gra is astonished at this halacha because in the final analysis, because of tfisas yad, they don't need any Arab whatsoever. And the general principle is that whenever they don't ask from each other to require an Arab, so they're considered to be one unit. So therefore, and they don't have to rent out for the non-Jew. And also Mamar Mordechai and the Atzei Amoigim, and it's left in Tzachir, and the Mesach Eliezer tries to resolve the Ramah. But evidently the Aruch HaShulchan did not hold it can be Mako like the Gra's question. Chabes, the Chachamim said you can rent out from the non-Jew's wife, but even though he doesn't want her to rent it out. Mishnah Berurah says the Gra says that's only according to one opinion, and but according to the other opinion, there, if he doesn't let his wife rent it out, she can't rent it out nevertheless. Obviously, the Rabbanan, you can be Mako. You can also rent it out from the employees. Different types of employees. Shalkuti of non-Jew. Socher mikra, a socher is a person who works them all year round. But lucky mikra and lucky is somebody who works them during the harvest and the gathering, not year in, year out. And the Mishnah Berurah adds any servant has the same any servant has the same stature as well. We can make again. You can rent for them even though the Baal Bus protests. Those, however, who are concerned the B'schil Kito, they were talking about renting out for an employee. It doesn't work. When the employers protest, they can't rent. You can't rent from them. That's the Bach. But the Turin don't differentiate, and they obviously according to them, the B'schil Kito like the wife. And that's by my law that even if the husband protests or the employer protests, too bad. But nearly, it seems to me the guy be no bito v'chasana also from his son, from his daughter, from his son-in-law, v'kalson his daughter-in-law, chetzebem, etc. Shem darim sham b'chotzer, and they're living there in the chotzer. Chel maskir they can rent from them, ishto, just like renting from his wife, logarim iskil kito, and they're no worse than employees. So kito shasachir valakit, and if the employees have their own employees, it's also like the employees of the balabas. The kilcham is there, she rak shame skirus, just to be a chale shame skirus, but even in the most lenient possible manner. Mishnah says that that's when the maskir has authority. I'm sorry. I guess it's only when the employee has the authority to hire another employee. Okay. Naju doesn't want to rent. One of the members of the people who lives in the courtyard should go to him, should become close to him. Until the point that the Naju says, okay, you can put your lawn chair on my lawn, so to speak. And it's as if he's loaning to you his jurisdiction. And now you, the Jew, become like his employee. And now you, the Jew, can rent out to your fellow Jews, even without the non-Jewish employer's authority, authorization. Some say some people say that in this case you don't have to do schirus rishus. The Yemen Yisrael is schir l'kito, since the Yisrael is the employee of non-Jew, nos erev v'dayo. He can just give an erev, that suffices. Once he participates in erev, that already includes the non-Jew. Zeh das atur chem perish Rashi. Shkei mashu lashon shas. This seems to be the simple shas in the shas. Shomer says the schir l'kito nos erev v'dayo. The employee can give the erev that suffices. Because it says if he's living with the non-Jew together. The house and yard belong to him for this purpose, so you don't require schirus. But the Rambam Paskins know that he's still an employee, and therefore Tzimtzum discriminate, they have to rent it out from the Jew. And the Rambam will have to explain that when it says that schir l'kuto nosen eruvo b'dayo, that's saying about the schir l'kito of the Yisrael can give the erev on behalf of the Ba'abas. So that's true if it's an employee, even if he doesn't live in this actual chutzner, he can do it for his employer. The Shubur says the chatchila, you should be choishesh for the opinion that you have to rent out from the Jew who has now ingratiated himself and made himself the employee of the non-Jew. When he loans him his the non-Jew loans the Jew his area to put his objects there. If he doesn't actually put the objects there, that suffices. Since he has the theoretical sanction to do so. In this case, you have to make some nice kinyan with the non-Jew. And also he has to give permission to put his stuff anywhere in the non-Jew's house. Because the non-Jew designates a specific part of the house for him. Shemashu, which he lends to the Jew. Since you're not like his agent in the entire house, lo hamani lios you're not effectively an employee for this purpose. If Shekosa does right the Gamachai Gavno, Kshesh lo kuti rishus gankein, Laniach chafotza makom zeh, hador, havelo schir l'kito. And those words that if the non-Jew can also put his stuff in the place where the Jew is putting his stuff, then it's like the Jew is still like an employee. Since they both share jurisdiction over a specific place in the house, even the Jew is like his employee. Or even the non-Jew has no permission to use that area in the house. But he has a right to remove the Jew anytime. Nechsha gankin kiskiro ulakito. Okay, I guess even under those circumstances, called skiro ulakito. The zemikashe so who tachas rushuso, because that's called the Yisrael is on the authority of the non-Jew who has this power over him. Mela the havi kadino kiskiro ulakito. So therefore, automatically has the halacha of skiro ulakito. The Be'er Halacha writes, the Beis Yosef says that this is only an issue when the non-Jew, if it's an issue, it's only an issue when non-Jew specifically prevents him from using the rest of the house. But as long as he doesn't prevent him from using the rest of the house, even though he told him, put your stuff over there in that corner, we say that the das of the non-Jew was to allow him to use other places in the house as well. The Bach argues on the Beis Yosef, and the Eliyahu Rav and Taz agree with the Bach. Okay. Chav hey. Kito azman mugbal. If you rent out from the employee for a specific amount of time, Tosman said the amount of time. Silka kutim yos silkito, the non-Jew fired these employees. Komko nevertheless says man is time till the time originally agreed upon. The rental is in effect. Came Machel Azur Shus Laskir. Komashal Sakayam, since he had permission halachically to rent it out, or whatever he did is transcends his termination. I'm sorry, man of Stam, if you rent it out from the employee generically, without a time frame, came to Silko, then once he's fired, the rental is void. Because we assume that he only the employee only could rent it out for the time that he was his employee. Vuadin, in that case, I'm not. He only had in mind he was as long as his employee. Vuadin shus me'agizba shel asar. This is true also if they rented out the authorization from the treasurer of the town official. We started the Garmin Asar, and this treasurer was fired. Im Scholas Moil, right? They made a specific time frame. Moil at my work, so the time frame is over. Vim Stam, but if it did generically in the spot, then the rental is null and void when the treasurer is fired. That's only if the completely removed from his position with the town official. But he didn't remove him. He just is no longer the treasurer, but he's employed in some other shape or form. And he's still paid from the official's budget, or maybe from the town budget, same thing. Mikra Yisrael Lakito is called employee. They can rent out the rishos from him. Mishnah Be'er Halacha is not sure about this. It's Sorkin Lamaisa. Back to Shulin made the Gam Skirtu Shine Dain Kemis. In this case, the first rental is still in effect. Even if they rent it out generically. Fimach is born Komashamarmi as Kola ear. And according to what you explain, in places where they rent out the entire city, even Nitzach Liskor or Shus Bisarin, you have to rent out the permission to carry from the official of the city. In Yesh, saw is a Sherus Bisham. If the Jew has some service that he fulfills for the municipality, Nechshav Kito is also considered to be an employee. So remember, you can rent it out from the Jew. Rishus a year, al Harbei Shonim. You rent out the jurisdiction over the city for many years. Then even if it's fired later on, yes, here is Kayam. The schir should be in effect, Moshe's by as we explained. The Torah is going to make 50 shana. It's best to do it for 50 years, which is a long time. If it just rent out generically, and the Jew was fired from his position, but less schirus, the schirus is null and void. As he wrote, and you have to rent out for somebody else. Not so common, the new guy. From a non-Jew who has there some position. There's a lot of Mishnah Berurah on this. Mishnah Berurah says that I'm saying not specifically a treasurer, but any one of the slaves of the minor slaves of the town official, and also brings down from later on that you should not rent out the authority from the army officers because they don't have any jurisdiction in the city, but only from the police. And the police can also bring out firemen because they have jurisdiction in the city. Mishnah Berurah also says that the time, many Achronim said that you can do it for a long time, and you can do it forever it works, but it's best to do 20 years. So big gap there, 20 between 20 and 50 years. Okay.